The Second World War between 1939 and 1945 ripped Europe apart, with millions suffering at home and abroad. The war effort would take centre stage, derailing football both in terms of competition and impacting the careers of players, many of whom either lost their peak years to the war or who had retired by time official league football resumed. For Rangers, the post-war years heralded a new era and what many consider to be one of the greatest Rangers sides.
Men were returning from the forces, life was starting to get back to normal, and actually it was probably halcyon days for Scottish football, boom time as far as crowds were concerned.
Hibs had their best team ever, Dundee had their best team up until that point in time, Aberdeen had their best team up until that time. Obviously Rangers had dominated the war years, Rangers were still the team to beat.
In March 1946, Churchill went to America and delivered quite a well-known speech. He said that from Stettin in the Baltic to Trieste in the Adriatic, an iron curtain has descended across this continent. It was all about the political situation, the Russians and the West effectively. And that term that was coined then became popularised in football. And it was actually used in connection with quite a number of clubs. But around about the mid-40s, Rangers had a fairly solid defence. And that defence was Brown, Young and Shaw, McCall, Woodburn and Cox.
Back in the late 1940s, 1950s era, it has a brilliant rivalry. It's one of the great rivalries, I think, within the 20th century, within Scottish football, between Rangers and Hibs. The asset that Hibs had was the famous 5-forward line.
They always talked about the famous five, Hibs' famous five, but they never talked about the Rangers' famous five. You know, you kind of Waddle and Gillick, Thornton, Venters, Greer. It was always the famous five of the Hibs, it wasn't the famous five of the Rangers.
That team played together for a long time, came together about 1946 and played almost together until into the 50s, 1952-53. As a matter of fact, in the 3 cup finals that we played, 48, 49, 50, in the 3 finals we only used about 15 players. And the same defence played in the same 3 finals right through.
It's a very subjective discussion, given how different football was in that era. But when you're talking about great Rangers defensive lineups, the Iron Curtain defence is very, very high up on that list.
Rangers are the team they are today and hopefully will continue to be because of the legacy and standards, which is what Mr. Struth was all about. It's about standards. That team in particular set a standard without exception.